Ah, Texas, our Texas. There are so many things to love about our great state. The history, the people, the mix of cultures, the sunsets, the bluebonnets, and definitely the cuisine. Texas has its own signature flavors, and here are some of my favorite ones in shelf-stable form. Not all of these dishes are unique to Texas, and some of them didn't even originate here, but we sure do love to eat them, and I hope you'll give them a try. Today, I'll show you 5 of my favorites. I've got 3 main dishes, 1 spicy side dish that's my husband's all-time favorite, and 1 breakfast biscuit that puts all others to shame. I'll show you my chicken fried steak bites along with the mashed potatoes and cream gravy that it's served with. These little steak bites are scrumptious, and you're not going to believe they came from freeze-dried food. I've got a King Ranch chicken casserole that tastes just like the ones you get from the restaurants. It's ooey, gooey, cheesy, and wonderful. My jalapeno cheddar breakfast biscuits are stuffed with a sheet pan egg and sausage filling that's so simple to prepare, and it's made super easy with freeze-dried ingredients. My chuck wagon chili does include beans, okay? And it's stick-to-your-ribs satisfying. It'll keep you full even if you're out on the trail. And finally, a jalapeno mac and cheese that will rival anything you've seen at the steakhouse. It's terrific. I really hope you enjoy this compilation video of dishes that are inspired by my home state of Texas. Welcome to the Freeze-Dried Foodie. My name's Kareth. Here you'll find delicious recipes that feature freeze-dried ingredients. Now, I use a lot of Thrive Life, but they've gone out of business, and you can use other brands in my recipes. Lots of us have food stores that we need to know how to cook with. On this channel, I'll show you how I cook with mine. All right, first up, I'm going to show you my chicken fried steak bites along with the mashed potatoes and the cream gravy to go with it. And these are going to have the same taste and texture as a regular chicken fried steak, but you won't need the steak knife because they're in the little bites. Please bear with me as I have to re-record the audio for this. The original audio has had some sort of a copyright issue with it, so I can't republish it, and I'm having to redo this, so please bear with me. I do want to thank my husband, Drew, because he's the one who gave me the idea to even attempt these chicken fried steak bites. I really didn't think it was something that was possible to do with freeze-dried food just because steak bites are already cooked, and I didn't think it would go well. But he said, it's not going to hurt to try. Why don't you just try? And I'm really so glad that I tried because they turned out fantastic. I was really, really pleased with these. If you're not familiar with chicken fried steak in general, it is something that we love to eat here in Texas, and it's basically a tenderized steak, and that steak is battered and then fried. So it's battered and fried like you would normally fry chicken, and that is where the name comes from. All right, first of all, let me show you how I put together the steak jar. I am using a 24-ounce jar. I have a lot of those, but not a lot of people have them. Don't worry about it. You can put this in a quart jar. So first of all, you can put the steak bites at the bottom. I used 1 1/4 cups of the beef dices. I typically say somewhere around 1/2 cup per person, but my daughter doesn't have a huge appetite, so I just did 1 1/4 cups. I was feeding 3 people. And then into a baggie, you can put the breading. I'm using all-purpose flour and some all-purpose seasoning in there. You can make these with gluten-free flour. And in a separate baggie, I'm including 3 tablespoons of egg crystals or scrambled egg mix. That's the whites and the yolks. And I am going to use it as like part of the breading station. So that's the first jar, the steak jar. And then I will show you how I put together the mashed potato jar, and then after that, the gravy jar. So for the mashed potatoes, that's just a pint-sized jar. Like I said, I'm feeding 3 people, and I just thought this was probably enough mashed potatoes for all 3 of us. It's a cup of instant potatoes, And like I said in the original video, I'm being sort of extra here. You don't actually need all this. I've got butter powder, sour cream powder, and seasonings here. You could probably get away with just some salt and pepper and the potato flakes. You don't need a lot more because the potatoes are going to get covered in gravy, or at least that's how we eat it here in Texas. So here's the gravy jar. I've got a pint-sized jar. I'm making like enough to make several batches of gravy. So in goes some all-purpose flour. Yes, you could use gluten-free flour. Also, you're going to add some instant milk powder. And then to make it cream gravy, you add a little bit of heavy cream powder. And the cornstarch that goes in there, that is going to help with the texture of your gravy. You need to add a good amount of salt and pepper and just a pinch of cayenne. It's really not going to make the gravy very spicy. It just gives some depth of flavor to the seasonings. All right, and then there's the oxygen absorber. I really was supposed to shake this up. It needs to be completely mixed up in order to portion out the amount you need to make a portion of gravy. I forgot to do that. Y'all do that. Shake it up really good. Make sure it's well mixed. You don't have to make all these things together. You could make just the steak bites and the gravy. You don't have to have mashed potatoes, but that's how we eat them here in Texas. Is typically the chicken fried steak is served with mashed potatoes and gravy and some sort of a side like green beans or corn. All right, whenever you're ready to make the chicken fried steak, you're going to need to start with the steak bites, because these little things, they need to completely rehydrate before you bread them and fry them. You can take out those little bags, set them to the side, and then add near boiling water. And you add just enough to where it starts to float in there. And then that's usually all you need. You could always add a little bit more, but I think the near boiling water will help those to refresh faster. You can also add some seasoning to those beef dices if you like. I think the ones from Thrive Life were seasoned pretty well, so I didn't add anything to it, but you definitely could add some seasoning to that along with the water. And while those beef dices are refreshing, you can go ahead and add the water to your eggs. Get those ready for the batter station. Also, get your flour into a bowl, give it a good stir, incorporate that seasoning. And then every once in a while, come along and stir or shake your beef dices. Make sure they have plenty of access to that water. I went ahead and made my mashed potatoes while my steak was refreshing. So all I did was add some water to a pot and bring it to a simmer or to a boil. And then you can turn it off, add the instant mashed potato flakes. Everything in there is pretty instant, so it's ready pretty instantly. Give it a really good stir. Make sure there's no clumps or dry powders left anywhere. And then that's it, y'all. That's all there is to the instant mashed potatoes. You can cover those and keep them warm while you work on the rest of the meal. Now, I used kind of a medium to medium large size pot, and you need about an inch of oil in whatever pot you use. You don't need a lot of oil because these little bites are kind of small, but you'll need to get this to about 360 degrees Fahrenheit. And the only way to make sure is to use a thermometer. It took me about 15 to 20 minutes on about a level 4 on my stove in order to reach that temperature. After about 20 minutes or so of refreshing, those beef dices should be nice and refreshed and rehydrated. When you squeeze them, water should come out of them, and they should be totally tender, no crunch left whatsoever. You can drain off the liquid from the beef, but save it, and you can use it in the gravy. That is good liquid right there. It's like a beef flavored liquid, and that's really good in the gravy. So you'll go ahead and empty out the beef dices onto some sort of a plate, and then you'll need to sprinkle the beef dices with some flour. You kind of want to coat them with flour to start with. And that's the reason I do that is because my mom used to do that when she made her chicken fried steak. She would dip the steak in flour and then dip it in the egg and then back in the flour. And I think it's important to do both of the dredges in flour because of the fact that the beef is already cooked and you want to create kind of a thick layer of crust. That will help the beef not to dry out too much when you fry it. So it goes into the egg and then it goes into the flour, and get a really good dredge of flour on there. I ended up doing this in batches. I just kind of wanted to make sure that each individual steak bite had plenty of room to get coated in the egg and then coated in the flour. I ended up getting that slotted spoon looking thing, that metal thing, in order to shake off the excess flour. And then I put it in that strainer to make sure there was, not too much excess flour on the outside of those little steak bites. Whenever my oil was hot, it was at 360 degrees. I fried this steak in batches. I ended up doing 2 batches. And the reason is you just don't want to crowd your oil so much that the temperature drops too low, because when it does that, then your steak, it won't fry as much as it will soak in oil, and that's not what you want. So do this in batches, and all you need is about 2 minutes in that oil. It will get nice and golden, and that will be crispy on the outside. And then you can drain those on a paper towel lined plate. And like I said, I did this in 2 batches, and it only took a total of about 5 minutes to do the frying process. What takes the longest here is for your oil to get to temperature. And you don't want to heat it on too high of a heat, because then it will burn when you cook your steak. So just be patient with it. Put it on like a medium until it gets to the correct temperature. That's all there was to the frying. Now it's time to make the gravy. And I just had a medium-sized skillet. I put about 2 tablespoons or so of butter in there. This is probably about medium heat. And then 1/4 cup of that gravy mix is going to go in there. You need to whisk this, and what you're wanting to do here is to brown the flour. Raw flour does not taste good, but toasted flour is very good. That's the secret to good gravy. All right, so grab that beef liquid that you saved and add enough water to it to equal 1 cup. Pour that over your toasted flour, your gravy mix, and then start whisking. And you need to whisk constantly until there's no more lumps, probably about a minute or so, and then cook it for maybe another 2 or 3 minutes until it gets to the thickness that you like. And you need to whisk gravy pretty often. Don't walk away from it, or else it'll kind of lump up. But it should be thick enough to coat the back of a spoon. Give that a taste and see if you need to adjust the seasonings. I didn't add anything to mine. Mine was really great. All right, now it's time to plate up your fantastic Texas-inspired chicken fried steak bites meal. And you can just spoon you some mashed potatoes on that plate, and definitely put some gravy on top of the mashed potatoes. If you went to a restaurant around here, what would probably happen is the gravy would come on the mashed potatoes and on top of the steak bites, or excuse me, not steak bites, and on top of the steak. But since it's in little bites here, I wanted you to be able to see them really well, so I didn't put it on the top. And also, my daughter says the best way to serve this, or the best way to eat this, is to dip it into the gravy. So I have a little bowl of gravy there. I wanted to show you. This is my daughter Ashley. She says this is definitely the way to go, is to take those little bites and dip them into the gravy. However you do it, just so they're together, I think you're going to have a winner of a dinner here. I prefer to just eat these with a fork, and I like to make sure that you get a little mashed potatoes and a little gravy in every bite. I think with freeze-dried beef dices, what you have to be careful of is them being too dry when you eat them. So you can refresh them and then heat them up, but since they're freeze-dried, they tend to be on the dry side. But since we double coated these and flash fried them like kind of quickly, only 2 minutes in the oil, they did not get dried out. They were actually really nice. And even if they do get dried out, if you have enough gravy, I think you're going to be okay in the end. This was a fantastic meal. It tastes just like a traditional chicken fried steak. They're crispy, crunchy, everything is nice and savory, and the gravy is fantastic with it. So I guess the takeaway here is, yes, you can bread and fry freeze-dried meat. You just need to make sure that A, your breading is thick enough, and B, you flash fry it. Don't fry it for too long, and that way it won't dry out. So give it a try. I hope y'all enjoy this meal. All right, up next is my King Ranch chicken casserole. I based my recipe on my mom's recipe. This is something that she had in her little recipe box. I just kind of converted it into a meal in a jar. Now, this one does have a lot of ingredients in it, y'all, but it is so good. I think if you try it and like it, you won't mind getting out all these ingredients. And I always suggest, if it has a bunch of ingredients, like make 2 or 3 or 4 jars at a time. And that way, in the end, it'll just save you time because you can do it like an assembly line. All right, King Ranch chicken. If you are not familiar with it, this is a Tex-Mex casserole that was very popular, at least in the 70s and the 80s. It's still popular here today in Texas. I mean, I had this at potlucks. I had it at like church covered dish suppers. Everybody loved a King Ranch chicken casserole. I think the recipe originated at the actual King Ranch. The King Ranch is a huge ranch in Texas. It's South Texas. It is probably the largest family-owned ranch in the United States. It has now like over 1 million acres. It's bigger than the state of Rhode Island. And the King family that started that ranch, they evidently had a lot of ranch hands that needed to be fed, these hungry ranch hands, and they would feed them this casserole. And I imagine it kept them full because it is so tasty and so yummy. I find the King Ranch story like really fascinating. They are famous for their beef cattle. They're famous for their horses, the thoroughbreds and quarter horses. They even have a Triple Crown winner that lived there at the King Ranch back in the 1940s. His name was Assault. So anyway, I think that's interesting. You can still go down to Kingsville, Texas, and take a tour of the King Ranch, of part of it, and you can go to the museum that's down there too. But anyway, this recipe is super yummy. I'm sure those cowboys and cowgirls really enjoyed eating this casserole. So what I've done here is I've taken a quart-sized jar, and into it I've loaded some freeze-dried chicken and then a bunch of things to make a yummy sauce, including heavy cream powder, sour cream powder, bechamel sauce, and velouté sauce. And by the way, I have copycat recipes for the bechamel and the velouté on my channel already. Just look those up and you can make those homemade in case you don't have any more of the Thrive Life bechamel or velouté. All right, and then I've added a green layer and a red layer, and then I'm adding some seasonings now, and I'll make some room in just a minute for some of the cheese that needs to go at the top. The green things and the red things, these are just the ingredients that my mom always put in her casserole. I'm sure that's the same thing that everybody put in their King Ranch chicken casserole. I've got, 2 colors of bell peppers. I've got tomatoes and onions, just a bunch of stuff that's going to make it really, really yummy. I recently saw a YouTube video of Matthew McConaughey making this casserole for someone who came to interview him. I just thought that was really cute. He was talking about how very Texas this casserole is. I decided to just redo the audio here because the voiceover and audio for the original video, it just wasn't great quality. In goes the freeze-dried cheese, and you do need to blend it first just so it'll fit in that jar. This jar is going to be really, really full, so you might have to press it down and be a little bit creative in order for all these ingredients to fit, but they do fit. Now, if you're going to keep this for the long term, I do suggest that you put in an oxygen absorber and go ahead and wipe your rim, get a nice clean surface there so that you'll get a good seal. This is the jar that you could keep stored on your pantry shelf, and you will need to have a bag of tortilla chips to store next to your jar because you need to add those to the casserole at some point. The original King Ranch chicken casserole was something that was made in layers, and it would have like a chicken and sauce layer, and then you used cut up quartered corn tortillas, and then you would put a layer of grated cheese, and then you would do that in layers and then bake it in the oven. For my recipe, instead of doing that method, we are just going to do a stovetop cook here. And so anyway, I've just emptied the contents of the jar into a large skillet, and now I've added some water, and I'm giving it all a really good whisk. Don't worry too much about those sauce powders. They're going to dissolve just as soon as some heat hits that. You'll need to bring this up to a boil. It'll take just a bit, but bring it up to a boil, and then you can turn down your heat, cover your skillet, and let this simmer for probably 20-25 minutes, just until your chicken is completely softened, it's hydrated all the way through, and it's good and hot. You'll want to stir this every once in a while, of course, because you've got cheese in there and you don't want it to stick on the bottom. But anyway, the longer you cook it, the darker it will become and the thicker it will become. And the flavors are just going to meld together and become one. And it's just going to smell so good in your kitchen. It's going to be amazing. All right, now it's time to add your tortilla chips. You have a couple of ways you can serve this. The first way I'm showing you is just put some tortilla chips in the bottom of a bowl and then spoon on the casserole on the top. And with this method, your chips will stay really crispy. Now, some people like that, and that's okay, but that is not really the texture of traditional King Ranch chicken. The second method I'm going to show you will give you more of a traditional texture. Okay, so what you do is you just take some of those chips, just as many as you like. I did a few handfuls. And by the way, I'm just making this for my family, so they don't care if I touch their chips. So if you need to, you can, like put it in a baggie and crush it with a rolling pin or something like that. But anyway, crush up enough chips to where it gets, it needs to be kind of thick. And then stir it all around. Make sure all those chips are coated because you want those chips to soften in the sauce. So give it about 5 or 10 minutes on low. Put you some freshly grated cheese on the top, like Colby Jack or cheddar or pepper jack. That is going to be so, so good, y'all. Cover that, let it melt, and then it will be ready to serve. After about 5 or 10 minutes, those chips will have softened in that sauce, and they are going to mimic just the regular corn tortillas that are in the original King Ranch chicken recipe, and it's going to have that same texture and, of course, that same flavor. I like to serve this with a little dollop of sour cream, some avocado, maybe some cilantro, and a nice squeeze of lime. And y'all, let me tell you what, this stuff is amazing. If you've never tried it, I highly recommend you try this one. I do not think you will regret it. All right, for our next recipe, I've got my jalapeno cheddar breakfast biscuits. And this recipe is based on something that I get at the local Whataburger. It is so good. Well, this is actually 2 meals in jars. They are independent, that you don't have to make both of them. You could make one or the other, but I like them together. The first is for a jalapeno cheddar biscuit, and y'all, it is so good. The second one is for an egg and sausage sheet pan meal. If you're low carb, you could make that on a low carb tortilla, and it is wonderful, and it's so easy. A sheet pan egg recipe is so simple. I'll show you. It looks kind of funny, but man, is it delicious. I love using the Lighthouse brand jalapeno peppers in this jalapeno cheddar biscuit recipe, but you could definitely use the Thrive Life green chili peppers if you don't have those. And I'm sure those would be delicious as well. Let me show you how I put this meal together. I'm going to start by showing you my biscuit recipe. I have the original recipe up on my channel already, and there are several ways you can put this together. This is regular all-purpose flour. You could use a gluten-free flour. I have that recipe on my channel already. And to the flour, you're going to add several other dry ingredients. These are just regular biscuit kind of ingredients. I like the butter powder in here for the flavor, but you also are going to add some lard. You could use shortening for the fat in the biscuit. And if you haven't made my biscuits, y'all need to make these. These are wonderful, wonderful biscuits. I am including 3 tablespoons of sugar in this recipe. Now, you might think, well, that's a lot of sugar. That might be too sweet. But let me tell you what, it's not too sweet. It's not overly sweet. There's a slight sweetness in the background that pairs beautifully with the spicy jalapeno and the savory cheddar. The texture that you're looking for in this is kind of like the texture of sand, like wet sand, or you want to get the fat about the size of little peas or something. You want to get a good distribution of fat in the mix. And then you can just transfer that mix into a quart-sized jar. I am going to add some cheddar here, just in a layer on the top, just because I think it's pretty. You don't have to do that. You could mix the cheddar into the biscuit mix. That would be fine. But I would, if I were you, if you're going to do the jalapenos or the chili peppers, I would keep them separate because you'll want to hydrate those or refresh those separately just to make sure that they're good and refreshed and they don't burn in your biscuit. Now, those are optional, by the way. I have one of my daughters does not like jalapenos in her biscuit at all, and you can leave those out and just do a cheddar biscuit, and you can put like a garlic butter on the top of those, and they're very much like the Red Lobster Cheddar Bay biscuits. They are fantastic. All right, now let me show you how I make the egg and sausage layer. I'm starting with the sausage crumbles that I have pulsed in the blender. You have to do that. They won't refresh in time if you don't do that, and you'll have crunchy sausage in your eggs, and it's just kind of weird. All right, and then in go the eggs and some instant milk powder. I'm seasoning these with just salt and pepper. It's totally up to you. You can add whatever seasoning you like. You can even add other things in there like green onions or bell peppers. It's up to you. You can do whatever you want here. All right, so this is what you could store on your pantry shelf. I actually got the inspiration for this recipe based on a local burger joint that has a breakfast menu item called a jalapeno cheddar biscuit, and they do a sausage patty on there with scrambled eggs, and it's so good. It's at a restaurant called Whataburger. It's a fast food burger joint, but oh my goodness, they have a really good breakfast biscuit, so that's what this recipe is based on. When you're ready to make it, what you'll do is start with the egg and sausage mixture, and you need to add hot tap water in there. The reason you do the hot tap water, I mean, it's not hot enough to cook the eggs or anything, but it will help that sausage to refresh better. For some reason, that sausage is just really stubborn, and it does not like to refresh very quickly. So I think if you add the hot tap water, you will help that process along. You don't want to put that into the oven for these sheet pan eggs and have crunchy sausage, right? So go ahead and use hot tap water, stir it really well, and then as you make the biscuits, every once in a while come along and give those a stir. Make sure that sausage is getting good and rehydrated. All right, for the biscuit portion of it, you'll just need to take out that little baggie of jalapeno peppers and put them into a little bowl with some water. You'll want to refresh these first just to make sure that they are nice and rehydrated, and then we'll add that to the biscuit. Now I added 2 tablespoons of water, but I think that was too much. I'm going to say maybe a tablespoon and a half is plenty. Give it a stir, and you'll see that it immediately starts to soak up that water, and they'll plump up right away. So that's great. You can just set those to the side while you make the biscuit dough. So get out a medium bowl and empty your biscuit mix in there. And since I didn't mix my cheddar cheese in, I'm going to go ahead and mix it really nicely, get it good and incorporated. Now I used half a cup of cheddar. You could definitely add more, but I thought that the half a cup was plenty. And you're going to add around 2/3 of a cup of water. It kind of depends on the weather and just so many factors, but I added 2/3 of a cup and it was still a little bit on the wet side, but it's fine. It works out fine. This dough is really not fussy at all. I just added some extra flour when I was handling it. There you can tell that the jalapeno peppers are good and rehydrated, and so they're ready to add to that biscuit dough. And just try, if you have extra liquid like I did, just try and strain off that extra liquid. And then look at the amount of jalapenos here. I mean, you wouldn't think that 2 tablespoons of jalapeno peppers would be enough in this biscuit dough mix, but it really is a good distribution of jalapenos throughout each biscuit. I think 2 tablespoons perfect. Now if you added the Thrive Life green chilies, you might need to increase that amount just a bit. All right, and you'll want to flour your surface and then just turn out your dough onto the surface. And see how mine's a little bit on the liquid side? No big deal. I just floured the top of the dough and then floured my hands. And I just started patting it until I shaped it into a circle. And because it was a little bit moist, I added a little extra flour on the sides, just enough to where it didn't stick to the surface and it didn't stick to my hands. And then I rolled it out just a little bit, and I'm going to show you a technique that creates layers in your biscuit dough. You just fold the dough onto itself a couple of times, and that creates the layers. And that's all there is to it. Then I just patted it down again, shaped it into a circle again, and then I'll get my rolling pin and just barely roll it out just a little bit. It was maybe 7 or 8 inches across. Just, you don't want to do it too thin here. You want your biscuit dough to be at least 1/2 inch thick. You can get your biscuit cutter, flour it, and just start cutting out some biscuits. I had a parchment lined baking sheet over on the side, and that is where I put my biscuits. A lot of times I don't even do a cutout biscuit because I think it's kind of fussy and it takes extra time, but today I did. It's up to you. You could make these into drop biscuits if you like, but I think the cutout round biscuits are really nice for the biscuit sandwich that I'm going to show you. So I just re-rolled my scraps and cut out a couple more biscuits. I got a total of 8, and there they are in the parchment lined baking sheet. I do recommend you do a milk wash. I think it gives beautiful brown tops to your biscuit, so I really do like to do that. And it's really easy to do. You don't need but maybe a tablespoon of milk, so it's a great time to bust out the Thrive Life instant milk powder if you just need a tablespoon. All right, you'll bake those at 400 degrees. Mine baked for exactly 15 minutes. Don't forget to stir that egg and sausage mixture. Towards the end of the bake time for your biscuits, you'll want to get out a sheet pan and put some parchment paper on it, spray it really well, and pour out your egg and sausage mixture. Set that to the side. We're going to put that in the oven in just a minute. Pull out your biscuits. Aren't they gorgeous? Okay, and then reduce your oven temperature down to 350. And what I did was I left my oven door open for like 10 seconds to help that process along. So you'll want to bake your eggs just until they're not jiggly in the middle. So mine baked for I think 8 minutes. And I put some melted butter on the top of my biscuits, but aren't they gorgeous? And see those layers? You can see where it helped to fold over that biscuit dough to make those layers. All right, and here come my eggs and sausage. And see, I can jiggle the pan and there's nothing wiggling in the middle, so I know they're done. And you can run a knife along the edge there. I sprayed the edges of my pan really well and it didn't really stick. I like to cut that in half and then cut that into 8 portions because I have 8 biscuits. Now, I almost hesitated to even show y'all the eggs made this way just because they look kind of funny. Honestly, they're not very appetizing to look at because the sausage floats to the top and it's like an egg layer at the bottom and a sausage layer at the top. But I'm telling you what, these things taste amazing. And just look at the interior of my biscuit. Isn't that beautiful with the flecks of cheddar and the beautiful green jalapeno peppers? Oh, y'all, it's so good. All right, and then you can just get you a portion of your egg and sausage out. It didn't really stick. It was just the parchment paper under there was wrinkled. But yeah, and just put it on your biscuit and there you have your yummy breakfast. Now, I like to fold that over and make a double layer of egg. I think that's the perfect proportion of egg and sausage to biscuit is if you double it over like that. Isn't that gorgeous? Just look at that biscuit. Oh, I was so pleased, and I cannot tell you how delicious these are. I'm just a big fan of sheet pan eggs now. It's so easy. The eggs are so soft and tender. You would not think that looking at them, would you? And the sausage is super flavorful. Of course, you could scramble them if you don't want to do it this way. That tastes good as well. And like I said, if you don't want to make the eggs and the sausage, make the biscuits. They're great alongside any kind of grilled meat or beef stew or chicken noodle soup, whatever. And then if you don't want to make the biscuits, make the sheet pan egg and sausage because those are so good. They're low carb. You could add some cheese in there and have yourself a nice low carb meal. Y'all. This is a really, really good recipe. I hope you give it a try. And let me know what you think because I love to hear from you in the comments. All right, so I thought I would show y'all my first bite, but then it really wasn't one. I had 2 bites. It was so good. Yeah, and these, I wanted to tell you, are perfect for meal prep. So I have got 8 biscuits and then 8 portions of eggs. And y'all, these reheat like a dream in the microwave. And like I said, I first tried these jalapeno cheddar biscuits at the local Whataburger, and I was just so excited to come home and try to recreate it in shelf-stable form. And y'all, I did it. It's so yummy. Hope you try this one. Moving along, I've got my Chuck Wagon chili meal in a jar. Contrary to popular belief, some people in Texas do indeed put beans in their chili. I do, and y'all, this one is fantastic. Today's recipe is for a meal in a jar. It's a just add water, simple, easy, quick meal in a jar, but this one is for Chuck Wagon chili. And y'all, it's amazing. I call it Chuck Wagon chili because it's got both ground beef in it and the beef dices, so it's kind of chunky. I have 2 kinds of beans in it. I actually add a third. I'll show you that in just a minute, but it's loaded with vegetables. It's got so many yummy spices in it. And I think you'll realize as I show you how to make this, that this recipe is going to be fantastic because of the amount of spices we're going to put in here. It's going to taste amazing. So let me show you how I put this together. I'm going to use a quart-sized jar for 4 servings, but of course you could cut this in half if you are just feeding 1 or 2. Cut all the ingredients in half, put it in a pint-sized jar. I'm going to start with 3/4 of a cup of our Thrive Life beef dices. So we'll have some good chunky beef in there. And then also 3/4 of a cup of our ground beef. I always pulse it in the blender because I like the texture better. I'm adding 2 kinds of instant beans here. I've got red beans, pinto beans, but they're instant. That's very important. You could also use black beans. I'm adding some celery that I had pulsed in the blender or crushed in a baggie. And there are some green chilies as well as some green bell peppers. I snapped those in half because they are slices to start with. That's a little bit too big, so I snapped them in half. In goes a cup of our tomato dices. That's a good amount of tomatoes in here. I mean, this is chili. You need tomatoes, right? Now, I'm going to talk about some of these seasonings, but not all of them. The chili powder, I think it actually does matter the brand you use. I actually use Gebhardt brand. It's a Texas brand, and they use a variety of chili peppers in it. Tomato powder is super important here because that's the equivalent of adding like a can of tomato sauce or some tomato paste to your chili. The vinegar powder it's great in there, but don't worry if you don't have it. Just leave it out. It's not that big of a deal. I do like the brightness of flavor that it brings. Okay, cocoa powder. You're going to be like, Kareth, cocoa powder? Yes, cocoa powder, believe me, doesn't make your chili taste like chocolate. It just makes everything more intense. It's very good in here. All right, be careful about the cayenne pepper, especially if you're using a chili powder that has quite a bit of spice to it. I like a little bit of extra spice in my chili, so I'm adding some cayenne. Of course, you can cut that out, depends on your spice level. I love the Lighthouse brand red onions. They're so good. But guys, if you don't have those, don't worry. You could just use all Thrive Life chopped onions. Now, I actually have a little bit of extra room in the top of my jar here, and I'm going to add some extra ingredients to the skillet as I make it. You can put them in this jar. It will fit if you think, yeah, I want to put that in there. It will fit in the jar. I'm just going to show you, this is the basic version, and I'm going to show you a couple of optional ingredients to kick it up another notch, like Emerald used to say. Okay, so when you're ready to make this, you'll get out a large skillet or a large pot. I think this is a great meal to take with you if you're going camping because you just need a pot. You pour the ingredients in here, add water, simmer it, and then that's it. I mean, it's really great. We would make this when we were camping, and my girls like to eat chili with Fritos, so we would make Frito pies. All right, 5 cups of water is what you're going to add to this. Or you could add about 3 cups of water and a can of beer. So we've done this in the past and it's really, really good. Most of the alcohol is going to cook off and you're just going to be left with the flavor that actually pairs really nicely with the spices in chili. You need to bring this to a boil. So I put this at a medium high and then I brought it to a boil. Then you're just going to stir it one more time and then reduce that heat down to about a medium low. I ended up at a 3.5 out of 10 on my stove. You need to simmer this for 20 minutes. Optional ingredient number 1 are refried beans. Guys, okay, so this is just adding more beans to your chili. I put about half a cup in there total. And not only does this thicken up your chili, but it also just adds some more great flavor and some more protein to your chili. Optional ingredient number 2 is a tablespoon of that pourable brown sugar. Now, you've got a lot of acidity in this dish, okay? The tomatoes, you've got 2 kinds of tomatoes, diced tomatoes and tomato powder. They're very acidic. So if you balance that out with some sweetness like brown sugar, it's going to make your chili so much better. So you do need to simmer this for about 20 minutes, stir it occasionally. After 20, give it a taste and adjust. I didn't change a thing. Mine was perfect. I let that sit on the stove for about 10 minutes while I was doing something with my dog. Can you see how much it has thickened up? That thickened up quite a bit in just 10 minutes. It's crazy. I like to serve this with shredded cheese, and then I just got some cilantro and some green onions from my container garden out back. But it's great also with sour cream. We like to serve this chuck wagon chili with cornbread. It's fantastic with cornbread. I've got a recipe for cornbread mix in a jar. Yeah, so that was a fantastic bite. I love chili. We sometimes even make this in the summertime. We just get a hankering for chili and make in the summer. All right, this is my kids' favorite way to eat this. They'll grab just a little bag of Fritos and we make this like a walk-in taco. Have y'all ever had walk-in tacos? We make a walk-in Frito pie, okay? So you just put the chili directly into that bag, and then you can top it with whatever you want to top it with. My girls like it with cheese just cheese. That's it. So Fritos, chili, and cheese. But I like to put, green onions in there and cilantro, and sometimes I'll mix in some sour cream as well. But it is a fantastic little dinner on the go. They'll take that into the family room and then turn on a show and watch TV while they eat. So this makes it ideal for going camping, I think, because you can just bring some chips, bring some plastic spoons, and make your chili, and then you don't even have any dishes really to do afterwards except for the chili pan. So it's really ideal for camping. It's ideal for if you're RVing. You could make this in a Mylar bag instead of a quart jar. Either way, it's just so good. You will not regret making this dish. I think you'll love it. We love it. I hope you do too. And last but not least, I've got my jalapeno mac and cheese. Y'all, this is my husband's very favorite side dish. He likes it with the shells. He likes it with the elbows. He just wants me to make it. He enjoys this with grilled chicken. He's had it with steak. We've had it with burgers, kielbasa sausages, like all sorts of things. All right, so what you'll want to do is go ahead and get out your jar. Now, I've got a 3-cup jar there, but if you don't have those, just use a quart-size jar. You'll just have a little extra room at the top, but that's fine. So in the bottom goes your pasta, and then a lot of things to make sure that this is a nice, rich, and creamy cheese sauce. This recipe is based on my deluxe mac and cheese recipe that's also in my first cookbook. This one's in my first cookbook as well, but it's based on that recipe with a couple of additional things, including the jalapenos. So if you don't like jalapenos in your mac and cheese, then you must not be from Texas. No, just kidding. No, if you don't want the jalapenos, then you can just leave them out or look for my recipe for deluxe mac and cheese that's on my channel as well. If you are all out of the Thrive Life cheese sauce and you're missing it in your life, I have a recipe, a copycat recipe for it on my channel. It's so very close to the Thrive Life version. It cooks up so similarly that I think you will not notice that it's a copycat. I think you can use it, just a 1-to-1 substitution for the Thrive Life version. So be sure to look on my channel for that. Click on the videos tab and you can see where that recipe would be. I'm using the freeze-dried green chili peppers, but if you don't want to use those, or if you don't have those, you can sub the Lighthouse brand of jalapenos in here. It's totally up to you how many of those you put in. I would suggest cutting the amount in half, maybe, if you're going to use the freeze-dried jalapenos instead, because they are a bit spicier, but it's totally up to you. Like if you like a really spicy mac and cheese, then by all means use a bunch of them. Okay, and I added some extra heavy cream powder, and then I am adding some dry mustard, which makes sure that your cheese sauce tastes really good and cheesy. A dash of nutmeg, some salt and pepper, and that's all there is to it, y'all. I love using the freeze-dried cheddar in here, but you could also use a freeze-dried pepper jack if you want to add even more spice to it. The color is going to be different because the pepper jack is typically made with the white jack versus the yellow cheddar, of course, but it's still going to be so good. So here's the jar that you could keep stored in your pantry. And I'm going to show y'all kind of an alternative cooking method. It's a little bit different. It's a nice one to use if you are camping or you're in the RV. You're in some sort of situation where fuel conservation is a necessity or a preference. This is a great cooking method, and I learned it from a YouTuber called City Prepper. There's a lot of science behind this, but he was saying what you can do when you go to cook this, you can bring it up to a boil, get a really good active boil going, and then you can actually cut your heat and cover it tightly, and it will maintain that temperature long enough to actually cook the pasta. So that's what I was showing you here. You can bring it to the boil and then turn off the heat, cover it tightly. And if you leave it alone for like 20 minutes, it will cook the pasta through, believe it or not. So anyway, I thought that was a cool cooking method. I wanted to show that to you. But like if you don't want to do that, you can just cook this regularly. Bring it to a boil and then maybe lower the temp a little bit and let it cook for 15 or so minutes. Stir it every once in a while until your pasta is tender. You can also do that. You might need to add a little bit extra water if you do that, just because the lid is off and you're going to get some evaporation. But it's also a very, very good method to use for cooking this as well. So y'all, yeah, here is a fantastic Texas quote unquote version of mac and cheese. Add some spice to it and jalapenos to it, and you can call it Texan. But I really like this dish. Like I said, my husband loves it. In fact, we're having burgers tonight for dinner, and I think he will probably want this as his side. So I am more than likely going to be having this evening, and I'm not going to be sad about that. All right, guys, I will link to the original recipes down in the description box below. I always do that for these compilation videos. I don't have enough room in the description box of this video to write all of the recipes. YouTube has a limit as to how long they let these description boxes be, but I can link to the original videos. Those have the full recipes down below. Now, if you prefer my recipes in cookbook form, please do purchase a cookbook. I have them available on Amazon in paperback and in Kindle forms. If you prefer a digital download where you could put it on multiple devices, you can just purchase that from my website. I will link to all of this below. Well, all right, guys, thank y'all so much for watching. I really and truly appreciate you. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the comments. And I hope you give these recipes a try. There are lots of other recipes that I could have included that I just didn't have room for in this compilation video of Texas-inspired meals, namely my Tex-Mex recipes. So if you're interested in that, be sure to visit my channel and look for that playlist. I do have a scripture verse of the day. I like to end my videos with a Bible verse. And today's verse is Romans 5, verse 8, and it reads, "But God demonstrates his own love towards us, and that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." Amen. All right, guys. Well, I hope you have a blessed day, a wonderful week, and until next time, y'all, take care and keep thriving.